right, Football v Football podcast back. Washington Huskies football recap here of their 24-5 win over the Northwestern Wildcats in their first Big Ten challenge. Huskies move to 3-1. Lots to talk about in this game. Of course, the defense was the story in this game and is becoming the story. The Steve Belichick defense is becoming the story for this 2024 Washington Huskies football story. We're going to start, though, with the offense here. Will Rogers, 20 of 28, 223 yards and 2 touchdowns. Of course, if you watch this game, it doesn't really tell the story because those 2 touchdowns were in, I believe, the first quarter, very early in the game. Maybe one in the first and then maybe one early in the second, but those were 2 connections to Denzel Boston. And then after that, it got a little sloppy. It got a lot sloppy, actually. They got complacent. They went up 17-0 and didn't do much until the end of the game. Now, there are a few things that needed to be addressed after losing the Apple Cup last week, and that is, number one, who's really responsible for the play calls on offense? Is it Brendan Carroll, Pete Carroll's son, or is it Jedd Fisch? Especially that call that we saw at the end of the game that lost us the Apple Cup, that is going to be a defining moment in the season. Washington State, by the way, yesterday won again to move them to 4-0, which is good for the Huskies. John Mateer is getting a lot of Heisman talk. I don't know that he's quite a Heisman, but it's getting hard to dispute it. He had 4 passing touchdowns and then 1 rushing touchdown yesterday again. So he had 5 touchdowns, hit over 100 yards rushing. Of course, against the Huskies, he also had 2 rushing touchdowns, I believe over 100 yards rushing as well. He was their leading rusher and then threw for a touchdown. But then he kind of collapsed in the fourth quarter, I remember, and essentially threw 2 picks. One stood, the other didn't. But so going back to this offense here, looked very good in the first quarter and a half. Will Rogers was looking strong. The connection to Denzel Boston was there. A little bit of a connection to Jeremiah Hunter. One was tipped. He should have caught a touchdown. No real connection with Giles Jackson, which I was surprised about. They didn't really get him involved. It was a little bit disappointing given how fast that guy is. You should be able to get him involved. I don't know if maybe the Wildcats defensive backs were keying in on him, giving more opportunities to Denzel Boston. Damon Williams came into this game for a little bit when Will Rogers got hit, kind of a little suspect in terms of the defender. It was a little dirty, but managed to stay in the game after Damon Williams had, I believe, came in for maybe 3 or 4 plays. 2 of them were just the same route. They were just to Denzel Boston on that left side. One of them, I believe, was like a quick slant. The other one was a quick hitch. But there was another play that he was in there, his last play, I believe, of the game, where he just kind of rolled to the right and he had players open, but he was looking for the spectacular play and ended up getting sacked. Not a smart move by Damon Williams. He had another play where he ran, I believe, as well. He is kind of like a dual threat. He can run, he can pass, but they're kind of simple passes that he's making. It'll be interesting. There's a lot of hype around Damon Williams. We'll see. We haven't seen him enough, but that one play where he took the sack he had guys open all throughout and he was just kind of running around. Not excited about that. Will Rogers, I think he is solid, but he is unexceptional overall. I don't know that he's a guy that is going to lead you the same way that Penix led you with his excellence, his superiority. And as a quarterback, there is an issue with the QB center exchange. I believe they might have fumbled 4 times. I think they lost maybe 1 or 2 of them. Down here, it says there was 3 fumbles. It only shows 1 that was lost, 2 from the team. But maybe they're saying that the center also dropped these other ones. But that center QB exchange, it wasn't a rainy day. It was a beautiful day in Seattle. So they're going to have a lot more rainy days and a lot more adverse weather, not only in Seattle, but also you're playing in the Big Ten now. You're playing in the Midwest, whereas you move into October, November, December, you're going to have adverse weather. You're going to have to get that down. I had issues with some of the play calling on offense. Like I said, after they went out to that 17-0, they got complacent. They had a terrible series when they were pinned at the 5. First, there was a false start, moved them back 2.5 yards, and then they opted to go with a passing play while they were at their 2 or 3 yard line instead of handing it off to Jonah Coleman, who is your superstar. Amazing game by Jonah Coleman. And it ended up in a safety because Will Rogers had to get the ball out quick and he was thrown to nobody, so it was an intentional grounding in the end zone, safety. You give him 2 points. As you see here, you accounted for, just on your stupid offense, essentially almost 50% of the points you gave up today. So that was a bad call. There was another just questionable calls, passing when you should be running, when you realize you have not only Jonah Coleman, but Cameron Davis surprised me a little bit today. He was a little bit better than I've seen him before. Adam Muhammad, I think you should get him the ball a little bit more as well. I think this can be a successful, run-based offense, or, when you need to run, you can get those yards, okay? I'm not saying run on every play. You do have great players at receiver. I like Denzel Boston a lot. In this game, 7 catches, 121 yards, 2 touchdowns. I like Giles Jackson. He wasn't involved much today. 3 catches, 16 yards. Jeremiah Hunter, 3 catches, 41 yards. Again, should have caught that touchdown. That was a great play by the DB at Northwestern. Really, the tight end's not really involved today. Just 28 yards by Kaleki Latu. He was on 5 catches, but they were all just kind of dink and dunks. And then Adam Muhammad with one catch for 5 yards. So the story of this game on offense was you got out to a 17-point lead. You played well for a quarter and a half. And then the end of that second quarter, and especially that third quarter, you were buns. You got complacent. I would be intrigued to know if Jedd Fisch or Brennan Carroll is really calling these plays. That's what I'm going to start to look into a little bit. But Jonah Coleman, he had 2 hurdles in this game. One of them was like a top play, hurdled the guy and then kept going. He is special. He is the best player on your offense, and he's still in college, so I wish they would give him the ball a lot more. He only had 15 carries today, 3 catches. I like him in space as well, so he had 18 touches. But I want to see at least 20, at least 20 carries for Jonah Coleman. Maybe they're scared about him getting hurt, which is why they gave Cam Davis and Adam Muhammad the combined 13 carries. So they got almost as much as Jonah Coleman got combined. Okay. And then, the offense scored at the very end, thankfully. That's when Jonah Coleman got his touchdown. But the Malays there, they were just kind of hanging around, allowing Northwestern to possibly come back into the game. Did not like that. And as you can see here, the Wildcats defense got home 3 times. They had 3 sacks. They had 4 tackles for loss. They had 3 passes defensed. So not a perfect game by our offense, by the Huskies offense by any means. But we'll move now to the stronger unit on this 2024 Washington Huskies football team, which is their defense. The Steve Belichick defense, which is coming into its own big time. The first couple games, they didn't allow a touchdown. They just allowed 4 combined field goals. Last game, Mateer figured them out. I'm just hoping Mateer is maybe just an exceptional quarterback. He seems to be. He has, I think, 11 touchdowns now through 4 games. That's 11, I think, passing. I think rushing he has, of course, at least 3, but maybe more. So that's enough. That's an offense that figured them out a little bit, but they went back here, did not allow a touchdown. So that's 3 out of 4 games now. You have not allowed a touchdown. Your first Big Ten opponent, you did not allow them a touchdown. You just allowed 1 field goal. You had 2 interceptions in this one. One of them, Carson Bruener, was in the right place. The receiver slipped, but he wasn't going to get that ball anyway because he was behind Bruener. And then Khmori House, he was the right place, right time. It deflected off of the receiver's hands, and Khmori House had it. And they returned it back decently, too. They both returned it back for about 20 yards. Some big fourth down stands by this defense, particularly when the best player on Northwestern, which is Hyman, returned the ball. I think it was like 90 some yards to get down to like inside the 5, and then the Wildcats needed a touchdown, so they kept going for it, and then the Huskies just stopped them. So several, I think, goal line stands, several fourth down stands, really well done. And that Northwestern coach was kind of funny in how excited he was getting by those small victories that they were having, even though you see here, they were down by like multiple touchdowns most of the game. So well done. The guys that stood out on the defense today, of course, you see Carson Bruener there, had one of his better games. I think he's just kind of an average linebacker. I'm hoping his seniority, allows him to develop as we kind of move through the season. Isaiah Ward really flashed today on the defensive line. He was the one that flashed the most today. He's a big guy. He had 2 tackles for loss and a sack, 4 tackles as well. Prysock, a little bit. He had a pass defense. That was a big one. Tunufi, he had 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Parham had a pass defense. Jordan Shaw is another guy that kind of stood out today. He had a pass defense. He had a tackle for loss. Tuputala, even though his stats only show 1 total tackle and 1 pass defense, he was flying around a little bit out there. Of course, he's the guy that dropped that ball at the 1-yard line last year, and it's tough to forgive a guy like that. But had a good game today. Thaddeus Dixon, who I thought was one of the bright spots of this team, 3 or 4 weeks in, had a pass defense today. Of course, what you're going to see is that if you look at this Northwestern offense, the yards that they were able to put up was barely anything. They barely put up 100 yards, both passing and rushing. Jake Lausch, 8 for 27, 53 yards, and 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. That is about as good as you can do against a Big Ten opponent. I mean, very, very impressive. And he had some moments when he looked good, but his receivers dropped some balls. I will admit, he was the main runner on this team. He led the team in rushing, but it was 13 rushes for 21 yards. So he averaged 1.6 yards a rush. I know they incorporate some of the sacks in there, and the UW defense got 2 sacks. Should be more. They should have gotten more sacks, but allegedly this Hyman was their funny name. Hyman was their best player, and he did look like the best player, but he ended up only rushing 5 times for 15 yards. He caught 1 pass for 8 yards. A.J. Henning was their leading receiver, 5 catches for 41 yards, and then everybody else didn't get more than 10 yards as receivers. So yards-wise, man, it was great to watch this UW defense. They kept UW in this game because the offense just kind of took the second and third quarter off essentially, and then parts of the fourth quarter as well. They just couldn't nail it down for a lot of the game. So the defense is the better unit on this team, and I still can't get over the offense letting them down last week. I mean, just if you score on that play, this is a completely different outlook for this team. They definitely would be ranked at this point probably like on the lower end because the powers that be still don't believe Washington's a blue blood, and last week didn't help. So they completely fell out of the rankings last week. I don't even think they were top 40 or possibly maybe at the very edge of top 50. It'll be interesting to see whether Washington State ascends now. They're 4-0. That would be very good for Washington if Washington State continues to win. So as a Washington fan, you should be continuing to support Washington State. The only thing is they don't really play any good teams. They don't have any good teams scheduled. Oregon State maybe is the one, but then you play a lot of Mountain West teams. So that's one of the downsides of the Pac-12 breaking up, is that, the guys that you beat maybe sometimes, like, if you lose to Washington State in the Apple Cup, Washington State doesn't have a lot of opportunities for another big win. But also, maybe I'm contradicting myself, but maybe it creates the path for them to be undefeated. Maybe it makes that a little easier. So you could look at it both ways, I suppose. Special teams for Washington. One thing I don't like is they have Denzel Boston returning punts. That's very risky. He's your best receiver, and you just don't want him getting injured. So I hope they switch it to somebody else. I don't want it even to be Giles Jackson, honestly. Maybe they're just seeing that nobody else has that skill set in practice, which, if that's the case, is bad. You got to get somebody with that skill set that is not one of your star players on offense. Grady Gross, interesting little series there at the end of the second half. By the way, at the end of the second half, one thing I was also tweeting this game. Check us out on Twitter, Football v Football podcast. Is when there was about 2 minutes and 30-ish seconds, maybe 2:25 left in the first half. UW got the ball back, and I believe they were only down 7. So they were only winning 17-2, and they were having an easy time moving the ball on offense at that time. And what I remember from last year, and what I really enjoyed about the Ryan Grubb offense, was they would just continue to go. It doesn't matter if you're winning by however many. If you feel like you're dominating that defense, you continue to go. And I think they ran a play, and then there was 2 minutes 20 seconds left, and there was no urgency for them to run another play before the 2-minute timeout. They call it 2-minute timeout. It's not 2-minute warning in college for whatever reason. I wasn't a fan of that because I like the aggressiveness of Ryan Grubb, and smell blood and stomp on their neck. When you got the chance, you could have gone up 24-2 and really maybe you start seeing some of their backups start coming in if you get off to like a hard start in the second half, and you really just demoralize them. So you don't do that, and then what you end up doing is you get a little conservative, and then you get into somewhat of field goal range. It's still a 51-yarder for Grady Gross. So they line up for the field goal. He kicks it, but as he's kicking it, they call a timeout. Northwestern does. So Grady Gross makes that kick from 51 yards, and then he runs back to the sideline. They praise him as being really prepared and really onto it. So he runs back to the sideline during the timeout, gets some kicks in, and then comes back in. And then he comes in and he misses it. He misses it wide left. So that felt like a big win for Northwestern, and I think that comes to what I said before, which is the lack of aggressiveness that they could have showed, and they were just kind of conservative. And when the defense is that porous, you got to go for it, and they didn't. So I didn't really like that on special teams. Just rely on that. Jack McAllister almost got blocked, I think, once or twice. So the punt coverage has to improve a little bit. On their side, they didn't have much. That Jack Olson, just made one short kick, and if it wasn't for that kick, it would have been essentially, no points for the defense allowing. But they wanted to get some points up, so they did in the third quarter. So that's the story of this game. Next week, you go to New Jersey and you play Rutgers. That's a heck of a trip. That's one of the things about the Big Ten now. You're going to have to come to the East Coast to play. And I believe they're playing on Friday. So this is a short week. It's going to be a really quick turnaround. Rutgers is 3-0. They're undefeated. They just beat Virginia Tech today. They're no slouches, obviously. So it's going to be a test. It's going to be another test. And I like what I'm seeing from the defense. I'd love for them to keep that up. It seems like maybe different guys shine on the defensive line. I think, today there was a little more pressure, got a little better. I'd like to see consistency from Ward, from Durfee. I don't know if maybe Durfee, was he around today? Was he might have been injured. I don't see any stats from Durfee, so maybe he was injured. Cam Fab for Big Ulanen. I just saw him allow a completion. He needs to be better than that. He's one of the veterans on this team. Broussard, didn't see much from him. He's supposed to be also a linebacker, I believe. So there's some room for improvement individually. As a collective, this defense does play pretty well. So I'm not as concerned about the defense overall. I am concerned about the offense as you continue to play some of these great teams. Michigan and USC played a really close game today. You can see that those are going to be very tough matchups for you. I know you play Michigan at least, and you play Oregon. I believe you also play USC and UCLA, if I'm not mistaken. I can just kind of check here. So the next games are you play at Rutgers. You play Michigan at home in Seattle. That's good. You play at Iowa. That's going to be tough. You play at Indiana. You have USC at home in Seattle. That's also good. And then you go to Penn State. That's going to be extremely tough. And then you have UCLA at home, and then you go to Oregon for the season finale. So all things considered, it could be worse. So in the next part of your schedule here, you get your two biggest challenges at home, but then hopefully you know who you are by then, and then you're more prepared to play at Penn State, at Oregon. By the way, Penn State is ranked number 10. Oregon is ranked number 9. This is this Rutgers game is going to be your last, possibly somewhat easy game, but it's not going to even be that easy. We'll see how Indiana and UCLA are. Neither of them are ranked. I know Iowa. Every time I see a team play at Iowa, it's going to be fun to watch them go there. That's a cool atmosphere. So that'll do it for the recap. Huskies now 3-1 after an impressive performance by the defense. Offense has things to work on. You got to continue to get Giles Jackson involved. Denzel Boston, great. Will Rogers and Brennan Carroll and Jedd Fisch, you need to sync up and really work on not only that center QB exchange that's foundational, but the play calling needs to be a little smarter. You got to realize you got your star is Jonah Coleman. It's not Will Rogers or even Damon Williams. Jonah Coleman is your star. You don't want him to get injured. Get him open in some more space maybe. Throw him the ball more. So that'll do it for this recap. Thank you all for tuning in. I want to allow you guys also to, I want to share some discount codes with you guys, anyone watching, so you guys can save some money. I have a promo code or a discount code with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a place where you get event tickets, sporting event tickets like for football, for soccer, for basketball, for baseball. Baseball playoffs are coming up. And for concerts, those are the two big, obviously, but anything else, comedy shows, the theater, they sell tickets for everything. So you go there, and when you buy your tickets at checkout, you use the code FOOTBALLVFOOTBALL, all one word. I'll put it in the description, and you'll save $20 off your order. So FOOTBALLVFOOTBALL at checkout, get $20 off. Next thing, if you want premium hats, tote bags, and shirts as well. I believe they're restocking for shirts, but definitely they're known for their hats. Huega House, Huega House. I'll put it in the description as well. A lot of really, popular football players and celebrities and influencers are rocking Huega House now. Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, and Shane Gillis, and a bunch of others are rocking Huega House. If you want to rock a Huega House hat, they have a cool aesthetic. It's like 1990s kind of style. It's cool. They got a lot of cool stuff. At checkout, use the code BALL, BALL. At checkout, you get 15% off your order. So go check that out. Get some cool hats. All right. Huskies win here 24-5 over Northwestern, their first Big Ten opponent. Go to 3-1. They probably won't be ranked, but they're undefeated now in the Big Ten as they move to Rutgers on Friday in prime time. That'll be a good one. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, have a fantastic day, football fans.